Okay, so continue to read my 2017 article in ACT, Thoughts on the Law, Gatekeepers, and Rerooting. This is, of course, a response to Randall Alsop's 2016 books, Remixing the Classroom. Opening to what? Alsop aims to increase diversity through public school music education. This might be a paradox. The question, how might we open our public school classrooms to greater diversity of students and musics, seems characteristic. Using the sentence as typical, we can treat it for a short analysis of open and diversity. What are the assumptions of this sentence? The assumptions may or may not be true, but it's helpful to address them before continuing. Assumption 1, we are the openers. And this we is most often students and teachers, though sometimes theorists, quote from Alsop, our reforms might start in ways that are conceptual, end quote. The prime movers then include students, teachers, and university professors. What is the nature of students, teachers, and university professors in our consumer society? They are designations in educational systems. A teacher might also be a father, a volunteer, a voter, but these are out-of-schooling designations. Defining people by their school designation, it becomes important to understand what school is. What does schooling do? Barry writes, quote, our education is focused on producing skills associated with production, distribution, and use of such a multitude of objects with none of the exaltation of soul provided by our experience and natural phenomena. End quote. The institutionalized students, teachers, and university professors will, it is likely, put forth the consumer values of our society. Ideas we have, especially without rooting aspects of family, non-colonial languages, and history, will likely be ideas advertised to us since birth by institutionalized music industry. Just as Barry concluded on education, our education is consumerist, possibly changing us into consumers or focusing our attention on consumption. Ignoring experienced nature and soil. New possibilities open if we open we to include non-institutionalized designations and people with no connection to schooling. Assumption 2, openness increases and closedness decreases diversity. This assumption can be analyzed historically. Did what are called open cultures historically cultivate the musical diversity we see in the world? Did Balinese society, now that it's open to media, trade, industry, liberalism, etc., develop gamelan? Or was gamelan developed when it was closed, with little exposure to the diatonic scales of music of the West? Did open societies like the U.S. cultivate or destroy diversity with the American Indian education programs? Each of these indigenous cultures cultivated what today is called a musical genre. Each of these genres held in them the wisdom of living well on soil. Diversity may not have existed in any single culture. In a soil community, mycorrhizal fungi and earthworms sing different songs, play different roles. Diversity is the result of centuries of culture, learning to live well in place. Take mycorrhizal fungi and earthworms from soil, put them in a lab, and they die. Open societies can observe, count, analyze, and dissect diversity. This leads me to ask the question, if open societies are not responsible for today's diversity, can today's open societies cultivate new diversity? Education as constructing individualism and reinforcing consumer industries, for instance, the record industry, work in tandem. As Chet Bauer says, quote, the allure of Western products needed to be supplemented in order to complete the conversion of the individual from being a participating member of an intergenerationally connected community to being a consumer-dependent individual. End quote. I don't have an image here, but in my book I have this image with these little stick figures drawn, and then comes in industry, like a lightning bolt, separating one. Now we have a individual, right? No longer connected to his people, right? We end up moving for jobs. We're disconnected. Okay, back to reading. Western values, even when co-opting non-Western musics, are aggressively promoted in both institutions, schooling and record industries. Assumption 3. Public school classrooms can be a force for cultivating diversity. In Homo sapiens' 150,000-year history on this planet, public school music might be said to have existed for close to 200 years. These 200 years have seen a tragic loss of diversity. Loss of human cultures, languages, and musics. And loss of species diversity. And public schooling, as part of Western homogenizing culture, is part of the problem. Shouldn't the assumption that public school classrooms are able to increase diversity be challenged? Perhaps we should begin with more extended skepticism. We may come to the conclusion that music education is able to be a force to reroot, resoil, rediversify the communities music educators find ourselves in, but only if we begin by recognizing fully that music education is the problem, and not only conservatories. Music education helps the consumer-dependent individual leave soil and lose culture to join the global industrial Western society. Conscious of our uprootedness, maybe music teachers can help lend a hand as the social majorities realize their cultural and environmental commons as sites of resistance to the poverty and environmental degradation that follows the spread of the West industrial culture. Right here is my decolonizing motto, right? Sadly, I think we have a group in music education that calls itself decolonizing, doesn't really do decolonizing work. It's entirely within institutions, for profit, makes money. Well-intentioned, but they're social saviors, just as has been warned, right? Esteva and Prakash warned us long ago, right? Let's not accept social salvation in place of real decolonization, where we go in to the social majorities, not as teachers, but humbly, and help them how they want to resist. Marta Gonzalez is doing that over in LA. It looks like there's people that are doing it, right? Who take decolonizing work seriously and not just as a buzzword to make profit. Who don't take the social majorities and their great diversity and simplify them to a simple couple letters that sounds good and works good in liberal colonizing politics. Okay, back to the reading. It is undeniable that students are unconscious of and affected by Western consumer culture. According to Koza, quote, corporations are not the sole creators of systems of reasoning that fuel unbridled consumption, but they clearly play a critical role in the constructing of wanting as the norm, the baseline, end quote. We should all be reading Julia Koza's work, right? Continuing on. It is also likely that industry-generated music fuel transience and anthropocentrism. Anthropocentrism. Transience. I think this is where so many of our people that go in to schools, universities, other settings like that, with the intention to decolonize, have the problem, right? Because these schools and universities, institutions themselves are transient, right? Transience fuels wanting, You find yourself in some suburb somewhere or some university town somewhere, dissected from your culture. And gradually you forget. Or maybe you just don't fully understand your oppression. Okay, continuing on, I have another quote by Bowers. The media is the voice of the new form of collective consciousness, end quote. And Estelle Jorgensen, crudity, crassness, banality, and incivility result when a society fails to take care of its culture, end quote. And these conducts are seated in wanting. Transient people are often unconscious of how media affects them. So going out, right? So I'm reading Koza with a counterpoint of Bowers and a counterpoint of Estelle Jorgensen, right? Two music education scholars with a just general social critic, right? Bring it together. So important. So if you're doing work and you want to do good work in music education, you need to bring in music education scholars. Otherwise, why are you writing music education scholarship? If you don't want anybody to ever reference you, right? If you're not saying anything important, why write it? Stop writing. I know you want tenure. Terrible reason. Terrible, terrible, terrible reason, right? Just to uproot yourself further so you don't know the soil on which you stand on. Think you're better than all of the poor people around you, all the diverse cultures. Give them lip service by stealing their culture and putting it into a rich university. Terrible, terrible. Okay, continuing on. Let's see. In a constructivist approach, students might still lack the intergenerational wisdom required to resist consumer culture. One answer to the question, to what is an open philosophy of music education open, is our unsustainable industrial neoliberal consumer culture. But that answer is unfulfilling. Can we further open? If not the gates of the law, then something. To be open not primarily to the voices of consumerism, but to rerooting. Perhaps we'll open a different gate. I'm going to stop there on page 60. We'll pick up again at rerooting. Have a good day.